Welcome back to Auto Tech, where we explore the latest and greatest in the world of high-performance cars and bikes.
2025 Multistrada V2. It's also the first bike that I've ridden with the new V2 engine, and there's also plenty of other changes across the bike that should make it more fun to ride, more comfortable and easier to get on with.
On this 2025 Multistrada V2, well, we have to start with the engine, which replaces the long-standing Testa Stretta that's been powering a whole range of different bikes in the Ducati lineup for years now. This new engine, though, named simply the V2, has been designed from the ground up, and Ducati claim a whole host of benefits despite being similar in its fundamental layout and the resulting performance figures. You see, the Testa Stretta made 113 horsepower peak and 94 Nm of peak torque, whereas this new engine makes almost the same at 115 horsepower and 92 Nm. On top of that, if you're already a little underwhelmed, then you might also be disappointed to learn that you have to work this engine harder to hit these peak figures, with both occurring a couple of thousand RPM higher in the rev range. Thing is, that's not the whole picture though. Ducati have removed, for example, their signature desmodromic valve timing system in favour of more typical spring-actuated valves, which should help to bring down servicing costs with both simpler valve checks and also eliminating the need to frequently replace the Desmo timing belts. At the same time though, they've also introduced variable valve timing on the intake valves, and that means, or at least they claim, that 75% of that peak torque figure is now available all the way from 3,500 RPM right up to 11,000 RPM. That should make this engine feel really usable out on the road, and so that's the theory, but what's it really like?
Honestly, you might have had your reservations about this new V2 engine from Ducati. It's, no real performance increase on the Testa Stretta it replaces in this bike, but I've got to say, I find it a lot of fun. Woo! It's easily quick enough to have some good fun on a bike like this, and I think it's a bit more free revving, let's say, than the Testa Stretta. It feels a bit more like a KTM 890 or 990 in that really playful, revvy kind of way. It sounds good. There's a nice amount of induction noise to make it satisfying when you get on the gas a bit. The quick shifter is super crisp, really very nice to use. And yeah, all round I'd just say it is a bit of a hoot. And sure, you're going to get way more power with something like the Multistrada V4. But I think if a lot of people are honest with themselves, this engine and its more modest peak power figure is actually enough for 99% of your riding. We're actually coming back next week to try the new Panigale V2. And I'm very, very, very much looking forward to seeing how this feels in more like a sporty application.
The other big advantage of this new engine that I skipped over earlier is that it's the lightest V-twin that Ducati have ever made, tipping the scales at just 54.9 kilograms, which is a good 6 kilos or so lighter than the Testa Stretta that it replaces. But the weight savings aren't just limited to the engine, with lots of work all across the bike, resulting in 18 kilograms of claimed weight savings, with the S model I'm riding coming in at 202 kilograms wet without fuel. I think I'm right in saying that makes it their lightest ever Multistrada, or at least in the non-S version without the electronic suspension package, which comes in at 199 kilograms without fuel. In order to achieve this, perhaps one of the more substantial changes is the fact that they've ditched another of their signature features in the steel trellis frame. This has been the structure of choice right back to the first ever Multistrada, but this new bike uses a similar concept to their V4 powered bikes and the most recent Monster, with the engine being used for the majority of the bike's structure, connected to the fork with an aluminium front frame. On this model, it also houses the airbox for neat packaging, and then there's still a bit of steel trellis with a bolt-on subframe, whilst the newly designed swing arm is directly attached down at the back of the engine.
It's pretty neutral in terms of the handling, and I mean that in a good way. For a bike like this, you want it to feel versatile and easygoing, and it feels just that. You know, it's never going to be the sharpest in terms of the turning with the 19-inch front wheel that you get on this sort of adventure-y style bike, but it's got to be a little bit stable, and it is that. It feels like a right balance between fun to ride on these more twisty roads, but equally easygoing and stable enough to be a usable tool. Same for the weight. You know, it's substantial, this bike. It is always going to feel like that, being an adventure style bike or a adventure touring bike, but because of the weight they've shed, it never really feels heavy. When you're doing day shooting like this, you're doing a lot of U-turns in gravelly laybys and stuff like that, it doesn't feel super top heavy, it doesn't feel unmanageable, which can happen, of course, with the larger capacity machines. It's great on the brakes as well, just trying it out through some of the turns back there. The Brembos do the job. The suspension package as well on this S model, the semi-active stuff, again, really good. I've got it set in quite a soft mode, a comfort mode, because it's not the best surfaces back there. But yeah, you can go even softer if it's very low grip. You can go firmer if that's your sort of thing. But it's got that versatility, and that's what a bike like this is all about.
Onto the ergonomics, and what I've always thought is pretty good about Ducati's adventure bikes is the sheer range of seat heights possible, which makes them much more accessible to a wider range of riders. This one is very much the same, with both accessory low and high seats that, like the standard seat, are adjustable between two positions, and then there's also the possibility of a suspension lowering kit. That means you can go from a super low 790mm right up to a very lofty 870, and so there really should be something for riders of all sizes. Still, we had the standard saddle on the day, of course, and I was testing it in its highest setting.
So I'm about 5'9" or 175 centimeters, and it's tiptoes for me with the seat in its high position. But I do prefer that high position when you're actually on the road, because it feels a little more open with the knee angle. But also you're sat up a bit, which gives you that adventure, touring, commanding riding position. So I think I probably want it in the up position, even though it does make it a little more tricky to reach down. What you do have as well on this S model is, if you press and hold this button on the back of the switch gear, the minimum preload feature, which does drop it down. And although it's not as good as an automatic adaptive ride height feature like on GS, the 1300, or I think the Multistrada V4 gets that now, just because you have to remember to press it every time you slow down, whereas it's more seamless on those other bikes. Still, having it is a valuable asset, and I think if I had luggage on or a passenger, I'd be even more glad of it. Otherwise though, great ergonomics and a nice neutral foot peg position. Nice bar position that's wide, so you've got lots of leverage. But the thing that's really stood out for me in terms of the comfort is this windscreen. Firstly, it's exceptionally easy to adjust with this little tab, I guess. When you want to press it down, pushing it in allows the screen to go down. When you want to pull it up, pulling the tab up allows it to come up in that direction. It's something that many other manufacturers somehow seem to mess up. And so, yeah, take note, other manufacturers, this works really, really well. But also, I rode here, it was a good 3 hours on the motorway on a Tiger Sport 800, the new sports tourer from Triumph for 2025. And that's got a bit more of a slim screen. Now, granted, it's more of a sports tourer than an out-and-out tourer, but certainly the coverage just isn't as good as this bike when this is up. There's way less buffeting with this. This is one of the cleanest windscreens in terms of airflow I've tried that isn't, you know, a completely massive Goldwing style screen. It's really spot on. You can pop it down and get a bit more wind flow to cool down, but in this up position, it's just quite quiet. There's not that bassy buffeting knocking your head around. And while that will vary for, you know, riders of different heights, if you're around a middling height like myself, I think it's really good, and I wouldn't even really think about, you know, looking for something like an aftermarket touring screen.
Now, I think it's fair to say that previous Multistradas have always been pretty well equipped on the tech front, and this 2025 model is no different, with a 5-inch TFT dash as standard with a range of different layouts, 5 riding modes, 4 power modes, cornering traction control and ABS, wheelie control, engine brake control, a quick shifter, LED lighting, auto indicators, cruise control, a USB port, and their Brake Light Evo feature. And that's just the standard kit. The S model also gets connectivity as standard, but it's an accessory on the base model. And then there's heated grips, fog lights, tire pressure monitoring, and more if you dare to delve further into the configurator. That many features could easily get your head spinning. And so what's it all like to deal with in practice?
Now, it isn't the biggest TFT dash, this. I think it's 5 inches. But it does the job, and also Ducati are quite good, I would say, at sort of designing the graphics and layouts. It's the right balance, I think, of like usable and easy to understand, while still having a little bit of flair and consideration to it. I was on an NT1100 recently from Honda. It just feels a bit sterile, whereas the subtle choices of font, the little red highlights here and there, the little gradients all tie together to actually make something that's quite nice to use. And generally, I would say the cockpit, haven't been able to go comprehensively into the tech. But, it's just well laid out, easy to get around. A quick click of this suspension button gets you into the suspension menu. Press of it does the low ride height. The direction pad here is easy to understand. The mode button. Cruise control is very simple. It all just works really nicely. Plus, you are paying a little more for a bike like this, it has to be said. There are certainly cheaper options out there when it comes to adventure tourers. But some of the little touches, like the Brembo hydraulic clutch lever and matching adjustable Brembo radial brake lever as well. So yes, first impressions of this bike are really very good. I did ride the previous generation a year or two back, and I thought it was decent, but I wouldn't say I came away from it buzzing. But with this bike, I think the more playful nature of the engine and the fact that it feels a bit more lightweight, it's impressed me, and it's a lot more fun perhaps than I thought I was going to have.
I genuinely really enjoyed this one. It feels practical but still fun, substantial but still lively, and it's a bike I'd gladly put some more miles on this year if I can fit it in. I do have to say though, as is more often the case than not with Ducati, while the price does come up a bit steep versus the competition, with this S version coming in at 16,390 quid. That plants it firmly at the premium end of the pricing spectrum, but if you're already thinking about buying one, then I guess you probably knew that anyway.
Thanks for joining us in this video. If you found this content engaging, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more thought-provoking insights. And remember, your comments are invaluable to us, so share your thoughts below, and may the wealth be with you.